Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. The advance of ISIS in Iraq continues, and so do the atrocities. A video was released showing a member of the Islamic State beheading American journalist James Foley. My next guest is the former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, GOP chairman, and a current political analyst for MSNBC. What should the U.S. response to all of this be? He'll also give us his thoughts on the racial unrest following the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Please welcome back to the show, Michael Steele. It's been too long.
It's been too long, and it's a pleasure
to
be back.
Great to see you. I want to start with this, what we're seeing in Ferguson. Now, the National Guard has been asked to retreat by the governor.
Yep.
More than 160 people have been arrested. 126 of those are in state, but everybody else is from out of state.
Right.
Okay. What do you make of the situation? What are we missing here? How do you see this?
Well, I think what you see right now is the frustration of a community that has lived with, as they would term it, injustice, whether it's with the police, whether it's through the political process. They feel marginalized. Their voice is not heard. And when the young man is killed, Michael Brown, it just kind of exploded. I think this has been a buildup for some time, as I've read back on the history of this town and read back on some of the narrative of the frustrations of the community. Yeah. So the question now is, how do the police handle it? How do the politicians move people through it? And on both of those fronts, not too well.
I want to share with you something Eric Holder said. The Attorney General went down to Missouri this week, purportedly to bring calm, to quell passions, to let the people there know the feds are looking into this. Right. They're doing their own investigation. Here's what he had to say.
In my conversations with dozens of people in Ferguson yesterday, it was clear that this shooting incident has brought to the surface underlying tensions that have existed for many years. There is a history to these tensions, and that history simmers in more communities than just Ferguson.
Does this quell passions or incite them?
You know, it does a little bit of both. It quells passions to the extent that the Attorney General is there. The President sends his ambassador, if you will. But even there, the response to the Attorney General was a little bit muted. It wasn't this overflowing, we're glad you're here. It was really, now what are you going to do? How are you going to help us find justice? And it also stirs up those passions because it then starts to ravel out a little bit about where else is this happening, where else is there potential for something like this happening, and if it speaks to some underlying concern in communities far away from Ferguson, what are we doing about that too? And it goes back to the theme that this president's had on race from the very beginning, which is how we deal about it, how as Americans we moved into this modern era with this baggage still on our back. And the reality of it is it's not rested in the President's Oval Office. This is something that needs to be resolved in the community.
Yeah, and we really don't know what happened. The witnesses are saying different things.
That's what investigations are for.
His hands were up. He was giving up. Another says he beat the cop up. There's some reports that he busted the eye socket of the officer. So we really don't know all the facts. Is there a deeper challenge, as was suggested to me by some black community leaders in New Orleans? Is there a deeper challenge for the black community here, where you have almost 73% of births out of wedlock, no fathers on the scene? Is that a contributing force?
I think that there are a lot of things that contribute here. Unemployment, poor education, the breakdown of the social fabric within the black community, the decreasing role of fathers and the role that they play in the lives of that community, jobs, and all of that comes to the table. But keep in mind, you have people talking about, oh yeah, well, there's no black male in the household, there's no father figure. Well, the black family, since it came to America, has always been a family that's been broken, where they were separated. Fathers were separated from their wives and from their children, and yet that struggle somehow manifests itself through the church. In other words, you had church and civic leaders who kind of brought those pieces together for family. How much of that is happening now, I think, is a lot less than it has in the past, and that's contributed mightily.
Wow. Talk for a moment about the religious role that perhaps we haven't heard a lot about here, but the truth of the matter is BuzzFeed and others suggest there were 100 clergymen on the scene, and that might be a contributing factor to bringing down some of these protests and the violent nature of them. Archbishop Carlson issued a statement this week. He had a mass, and he said, where's the quote? Here it is. He said, The residents of Ferguson, Missouri are struggling to find peace in the chaos. As people of Christ, we're struggling to find direction in the unrest. I encourage all parishes to offer masses for peace in our community. What have you seen in the coverage?
That is a beautiful, beautiful prayer right there. I mean, I think the Cardinal has laid it out very nicely. And these religious leaders have a chance to, you can deal with the physical aspects of this, whether or not someone's employed and what they're going through. But there's also this sense of hope that comes from the community, and that I think helps this community overcome, knowing that you have this greater faith, that together the force that tears us apart, we can turn around to make it a force that brings us together, and we can build this community. We can work on getting those jobs. We can work on empowering ourselves. And I think a big part of the Ferguson story is the fact that they feel disempowered, particularly a lot of the young people there. And that's the frustration you're seeing played out on the stage every night on our televisions. And that message from the Cardinal and others, I think, is very, very powerful.
Let's talk for a moment about ISIS, this terrible murder of James Foley there.
Yes.
And the threat of more violence against American citizens who've been taken hostage. Now, these folks thus far, ISIS, these terrorists, $125 million they have raised in ransoms since 2008, according to the New York Times. $66 million in this past year alone. Are airstrikes enough?
No, airstrikes are not enough, and you take that 125 million and you add it to the 400 million that they got from the bank that they robbed when they took over a few of those Iraqi towns. So this is a well-organized, well-funded, increasingly determined group of terrorists who that basically hate. They're built on hate. They've distorted the teachings of Islam, and it's been played out in a way that a lot of our European allies, a lot of our friends in the Middle East have contributed to this financially. So now it's coming back home to roost. Yeah. So they're well armed, and they're using that might against Western targets, and that's going to be a problem. Airstrikes are not enough, and that's the challenge the president's going to deal with.
Well, and the United States is supporting the rebels in Syria. Right. That is ISIS.
Right.
I mean, this is the underbelly of all of this. When Mr. Foley was taken captive in Syria,
yes.
It was when we were playing footsie with this group.
And the thing about it, Raymond, we weren't playing footsie very well.
No,
I mean, because
we don't even know who they are.
We were kind of in Syria, out of Syria. Do we attack? Do we not attack? And that opened up a window for ISIS and others to take advantage of the situation, and they have. And we're paying dearly for it. And the challenge the U.S. has now had to deal with is, how do we push back? This is not a matter of let's deal with them. No, you have to destroy this, because if you don't, this is a cancer that will grow and it will kill.
Yeah, sooner or later, more boots on the ground. That's
I think
inevitably
that's ultimately
what's going to happen here.
It matters how you leave Iraq, and this is an example. When you don't know how you leave, you're going to have to go back, and it's going to be worse.
Yeah. You can find out more about Michael Steele, read his columns, and keep up on his media appearances by going to SteeleForum.com.
Yeah.
Steele Forum. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, my friend.
Great to see you.